June 24th, 1876. As Custer's cavalry slept by the Rosebud, Red Star stood in darkness, sacred clay cold on his skin. He knew what the scouts had seen: sand prophecies of dead soldiers, abandoned lodges, and Sitting Bull's rituals staining the earth. The Arikara had read the signs: victory for the Sioux, defeat for Longhair. Yet when Custer ordered them forward, these young warriors did the unthinkable. They rubbed death onto their bodies and rode straight toward their vision. This is Red Star's eyewitness account, not from the battlefield's chaos, but from the chilling hours before. When Stabbed whispered, "Do not think like children," when Bloody Knife warned, "Scouts don't run home," and when clay became their shield against the inevitable. What did they know that Custer ignored? Why apply medicine to doomed flesh? And what happened when their sacred ritual met his last stand? For the first time, we hear Little Bighorn not through soldiers' letters, but through the whispers of the scouts who felt it coming. But before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. General Custer informed them regarding his intentions for another campaign and that their assistance might be needed. Young Hawk resolved to depart the scouts, but his father urged him to remain. Later, Son of the Star obtained a letter from Custer requesting additional scouts. A meeting was convened at Son of the Star's dwelling, and many were present. He declared, "My friends, I've gotten a message from a white man wanting some among you to act as scouts under Longhair Custer." This was not unexpected, as they were aware of Custer's designs. Son of the Star had also journeyed to Washington. Individuals consenting to go comprised Bobtailed Bull, Stabbed, Charging Bull, Horns in Front, Young Hawk, Bull in the Water, Little Brave, Bloody Knife, Tall Bear, High Bear, One Feather, Running Wolf, Red Star, Strikes Two, Howling Wolf, White Eagle, Crooked Horn, Scabby Wolf, Pretty Face, Curly Head, Black Fox, and One Horn. Certain scouts had already re-signed at Fort Lincoln. Red Bear consented to remain alongside Crooked Horn until they could journey back to Fort Lincoln jointly. Fred Gerard guided them to the commanding officer's quarters, where he showed Red Bear's authorization. Following a brief delay, they were directed to enlist, acquire uniforms, and arms. After a health assessment, Gerard escorted them to Custer's office, where they encountered Tom Custer, who bore a scar on his face. Tom lifted his hand, and Gerard told the Indians to do likewise. Custer appeared shortly thereafter and stated, via Gerard, that they were the final scouts to enlist. Owing to the expedition's preparedness, they must remain on duty at Fort Lincoln. Soldier and Bobtailed Bull encountered Custer at his riverside encampment, where he expressed, through Gerard, Bobtailed Bull is a benevolent and honorable spirit. I'm glad he joined us. The next expedition will be hard, but we'll confront it jointly as brothers. I'm happy to have him alongside me, and I mentioned him in Washington. We shall coexist and battle jointly as kin for the Great Father's design. The Sioux encampments have combined, and we must collaborate, aid one another, and adhere to the Great Grandfather's plan. The Great Father is happy that Son of the Star willingly consented to supply scouts for our next mission. He is also thankful for Son of the Star's backing in progressing his scheme. I'm prepared to fulfill my role, and so should you, my brothers. If any scouts furnished by Son of the Star perish in combat, their work shall be recalled by the authorities. While their relatives will mourn, they will gain comfort from the payment given by the United States government. Bobtailed Bull responded, "That is comforting, sibling. My household will profit from my earnings and any extra prizes. I'm pleased you noted this, since it indicates there's benefit even in loss." Custer then declared, "No requirement for more talk. Bobtailed Bull will command the scouts, having Soldier as deputy leader." At daybreak, the bugle called, and the encampment ready to advance. The force assembled its lines, and the scouts, headed by Gerard, marched on the fort terrain. With the procession finished, Custer led the departure. Dakota scouts from Fort Lincoln joined the Arikara scouts, joined by Koru, Metoxa, Mishpiaska, White Cloud, and Buffalo Ancestor. The first camp was established beside the Heart River, with a cattle herd traveling with the column to furnish provisions. The white troops got their remuneration, but the scouts didn't obtain payment since they had only just enlisted. Arikara scouts, Stabbed and Goose, were dispatched ahead carrying a communication to convey to the encampment over the watercourse, where Crow scouts and their translator, Mitch Boyer, were positioned. When Custer's force arrived at Camp 20, Red Star watched the advance from the opposite shore. Stabbed and Goose came back with their findings, and the army proceeded, marching with the regiment's musicians performing. At Camp 20, the foot soldiers prohibited wagons, and several mules were stationed, and the mounts of the scouts and horsemen were examined. Custer and Bloody Knife rode past, and Bloody Knife stated, "The commander states we're all advancing. There are numerous foes ahead. If we assault and are overcome, we must withdraw in tiny bands. Scouts do not flee or go back home. We were informed that if our unit fragmented, we'd reassemble at this base." I was encouraged hearing the band performing distantly and observed artillery pieces being transported. We attained the Tongue River, established camp, and advanced to a rise overlooking the Elk River. We descended to the Tongue River and discovered a deserted Dakota settlement. A trooper's corpse rested there, battered to death with only skeletal parts left. Custer observed the remnants for a while. We located a burial platform decorated using ebony and crimson bands signifying a warrior's interment. Custer commanded the scaffold taken apart and directed Isaiah, a black individual, to take away the garments and coverings. A partly mended injury was apparent on the body. We discovered diminutive rawhide pouches holding horned utensils and footwear. Isaiah discarded the corpse in the stream. We encamped there, forded the Tongue River the following day, journeyed across the Badlands, and set up a camp at the Rosebud's mouth. A steamship assisted in conveying artillery across the Yellowstone. The party waited while scouts investigated up the waterway. 2 days afterward, they came back reporting substantial Dakota tracks on both banks of the Rosebud. An encampment facing theirs contained Crow scouts and a translator who united with them. They struck camp and advanced up the Rosebud River. Howling Wolf, Running Wolf, and Curly Head were dispatched back carrying correspondence to the main camp. The scouts got 5 mules for their supplies. Gerard requested them to chant their death songs, anticipating a conflict due to the Dakota Trail. Custer, possessing a heart resembling an Indian's, proposed additions to their rites. Seated on horses, they circled about, chanting. Subsequently, they pursued Custer, marching until stopped. Custer guided parties of scouts to progress on both river banks. The next dawn, Bloody Knife appeared, guiding a steed, having passed the night outdoors. The bugle called, and they readied their mounts. Custer headed the column with scouts flanking the force. Bob-tailed Bull commanded one flank, joined by Strikes II and others. At dusk, they attained a deserted Dakota settlement showing evidence of a Sundance circle. The Dakota scouts and Custer's troops observed signs of medicinal rites, leveled sand, and drawings. They cautioned that the foe knew the troops were approaching. Within a ritual lodge, Red Bear, Red Star, and Soldier observed sand heaps bearing shapes of Custer's soldiers and Dakota warriors, with fallen figures between them, oriented toward the Dakotas. The Arikara scouts perceived this as meaning the Dakota magic was mightier, foretelling loss for Custer's forces. Advancing beside the Rosebud, they noticed Dakota carvings on sandstone bluffs, showing 2 bison combating. The Arikara construed this diversely. In a different sweat lodge, Young Hawk spied 3 crimson-colored stones, denoting the Great Spirit had bestowed triumph upon the Dakotas. Troops saw sacrifices, sticks wrapped in buffalo calf hide, fabric, and precious objects, signifying an important rite. Every Arikara comprehended this as a mark of Dakota's assurance of triumph. Soldier afterward discovered that Sitting Bull had conducted rituals at this location. After moving beyond the bison carving, they attained the Rosebud River Fork, where the Cheyennes currently reside. The 6 Crow scouts and their translator reappeared, telling of empty Dakota camps along the Rosebud. The army paused, and the scouts dined on a knoll. Custer came with his aide, bearing his banner. The Arikara arranged themselves in a semicircle, with Stabbed on Red Bear's right. Custer sat knee upon the soil, questioning, What is your view on the Crow Scouts' intelligence? They report big Sioux encampments. What will result? Officers assembled near the flames, positioned alongside it. Custer stated, "Via Gerard, I wish to guide them into combat and seize many Sioux ponies." He stretched out his arms, pleased to be among known countenances. "Among your visages I identify from previous journeys. If we triumph, Bloody Knife, Bobtail Bull, Soldier, Strikes Two, and Stabbed Will, with pride, guide the courageous youths in ceremonial processions upon our homecoming." Custer said, "When Son of the Star beholds you in the parade, he'll feel pride for his sons." To Gerard he appended, "Inform them that should we prevail, my sibling Bloody Knife and I will stand for them in Washington and possibly escort them there." The bugle called, and they advanced onward, guided by Bobtail Bull. They discovered another deserted Dakota settlement, extensive and spread out. Indications of rainfall were visible, with turf moved to channel runoff around tent rings. From this location, they viewed Custer's final observation hill, 12 miles distant. They traveled toward it, arranging a short evening meal halt before pushing forward overnight. The temporary encampment spanned both Rosebud banks, and darkness deepened greatly after supper. Across the water, Crooked Horn yelled commands to dismantle the lodge. "Prepare mounts, Red Star, Red Foolish Bear, Black Fox, and Bull." Forked Horn directed the party, and Red Bear discovered Bobtail Bull had ridden ahead at midday. This commenced the nocturnal trek, and they rode until daybreak. Weary, they dismounted for a quick pause and morning meal. Bull in the water and Red Bear unpacked a mule, and the former proposed, "Let's dine, since if we journeyed to the joyful hunting grounds, let's go with filled stomachs, collecting water." They traversed the troopers' bivouac, where men lay snoring, exhausted. The column proceeded, horses trotting, and stopped on a rise where Custer met them. He commanded, "Move rapidly and seize the Dakota ponies." Stabbed circled on horseback, urging the youths, "Show courage, don't reason like infants." Today's fight will prove severe. We've heard of a sizable Sioux camp ahead. Like an injured buffalo bull, we dread even a feeble foe. Stabbed readied us young and untried warriors for our initial true combat. Standing separately, he worked earth between his palms, entreating, "Father, I remember your assurances. I speak for my young men." Then he summoned us onward, individually, to place a strong charm on our forms. He expectorated upon the clay, then smeared it on our breasts. He had carried this unique earth for this aim. The mule group was left behind, having Pretty Face commanding it. Red Star survived. The clay washed away in the little Bighorn's currents. But what couldn't be cleansed? The weight of knowing. Knowing the sand prophecies were true. Knowing Stabbed's sacred ritual was both armor and omen. Knowing that when Custer ignored the signs, 268 men followed him into darkness. Yet Bloody Knife's words echo, "Scouts don't run home." So tell us, was this courage, sacrifice, or something colder? Why did Son of the Star's scouts ride toward a fate they foresaw? What did Sitting Bull's rituals really summon that day? And when Red Star rubbed that clay onto his chest, did he feel protection or a funeral shroud? This isn't just history. It's a warning carved in sandstone. When pride deafens men to prophecy, the earth remembers, the river remembers, the clay remembers. What do you see in the signs they left? Unlock the full testimony in our sources below, and speak freely. The Scouts' ghosts are listening.